Well, it sure is great to see all of you out here and still going strong, still volunteering for one of the greatest movements we've seen in our lifetime, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's right, and it's because of you guys. You have been the backbone of this movement, and without you, it wouldn't have gotten as far as it has gotten, correct? So I am really grateful for all of you. And I've watched this movement now since about 2013. And I will tell you that in 2013, I was approached and asked if I would support it. And I said, absolutely not. No way. You're going to open up the Constitution, and that's dangerous. And, and all the, all the talking points you guys, I'm sure, are used to. But it took education. It took me getting involved and learning that this is actually a viable path to fixing a lot of the problems we have with Congress, fixing a lot of the problems we have with our judicial system. And so it wasn't until I went to the Assembly of State Legislatures. Has anybody heard of that? The Assembly of State Legislatures? This was back in 2014. We all met, and we called it the Mount Vernon Assembly at first. And we went down to the Mount Vernon library, the George Washington Library there in Mount Vernon, and we met as legislators, and we committed to working on this issue. And I decided to go to that because I said, you know what, I don't agree with it, but if they're going to be messing with the Constitution, I want to be at the table to make sure they do it right, right? What kind of arrogance was that? And so I went, and I was blown away. I was blown away, and as I continued to go, I decided to step into some leadership positions in the Assembly of State Legislatures. And what they were doing is they were making rules for a Convention of States, Article 5 get-together. They weren't coming up with the actual amendment proposals, but they were just working on the rules. And it took us about, I think, 2 years, I want to say, 2 to 3 years of meeting, and we finally got to a set of rules that included Democrats being part of that. And that was an amazing experience, and it was that experience that taught me that this is possible. It did try to run away. The Democrats did try to co-opt the movement. They did try to blow it up. They did try all these things. They even walked out and broke quorum. They did a lot of shenanigans, and it wasn't successful, because there was enough Republicans there, enough believers in the process, that we managed to preserve it, and we ended up at the end, everyone at the table, signing like this Declaration of Independence. We made a big scene out of it, and signing those set of proposed rules for an Article 5 convention alongside with the Democrats, believe it or not, and we got it done. And it was at that time that I believed that this is possible. If Americans come together and do the right thing, this is something that should have been used a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so test number 1. Who was it that proposed Part B, I call it, of Article 5? Who was it that insisted there was a Part B of Article 5? Part A is that 2/3 of the Congress proposed an amendment, but who insisted that the people, meaning the legislators, could propose?
Mason.
Not Madison.
George Mason.
George Mason. Well done. Our forgotten founder, George Mason. George Mason also wrote basically the Bill of Rights. I forget what it's called. Bill of Liberties, or like the something of liberties for Virginia, for the Virginia Constitution. And those Bill of Rights were not included in the original Constitution of 1787, right? And so he was one of the 3 dissenters who refused to vote yes to ratify the Constitution. That took strength. It took strength to stand up and say, not without these Bill of Rights. And George Washington referred to him in future letters after that as George Mason, my former friend. So George Mason got unfriended by George Washington because he wouldn't vote for his Constitution. George Mason eventually went back to the private sector, did some trading and international trade, wrote letters to his son and said, son, do your best to stay out of politics at any cost, except for, because he was kind of been out of shape over the whole thing, right? He said, stay out of politics, except if your liberty, if your freedom is at risk. In that case, go all in, right? And we are at that point today. George Mason was a visionary, and he knew that there would come a time in our country's future that Congress would be out of control. And in Article 5, they would never propose an amendment to the Constitution to rein themselves in, would they? No. And are we at that time right now?
Yes.
Right. So if you are a constitutionalist, raise your hand if you're a constitutionalist. If you're a constitutionalist, then it has to be the whole Constitution, to include the visionary work of George Mason, that we can come together. We can have an Article 5 convention called by the several states, 2/3. How many states is that?
34.
34. You guys know your stuff, right?
We should.
34 states call through a resolution in each state, the House and the Senate, they call a resolution, and they tell Congress that they want to meet and convene and have a convention of states, just like what we are asking for. So he knew that they wouldn't rein themselves in. He also knew that they met regularly in having conventions, national conventions. Now, what makes a convention a national official convention is that both houses' leadership approves the delegates to go and vote on behalf of the state. So they have to sign, a paper and say, yes, these 5 people can go to a convention, and if there are votes, we give them the authorization to vote on behalf of the state. Now, the Assembly of State Legislatures wasn't a national convention in that sense, because we didn't have authority from both houses to do that. So we sent ourselves to that. We weren't appointed, but a national convention is when legislators are sent on behalf of the state and can vote. They used to do that at least once a year, frequently. They met and had conventions on things such as, should silver be used as coin? Should we use silver as money? What do we do about who pays for railroad tracks? Should it be the private industry or should it be the government? Sounds a lot like light rail right now. Same arguments, different wording. 2 minutes. Oh boy. Okay. All right. So Arizona has had the first national convention since the Civil War era. The last time they had one was to try and stop the Civil War and were not successful. It was called the Old Gentlemen's Convention, I believe. So we here in Arizona had the first one in 2017, and that was to put together rules for an Article 5 convention if it were called for a balanced budget amendment. That convention did try to run away. There was a state who wanted to add items onto the agenda that were not there. And you wouldn't believe how fast the legislators came together and stopped that. And it was all in good intentions. It was all in good intentions, but they didn't prevail because legislators knew that that is not what you do. You stick to the agenda because anything proposed outside of the agenda would not be a legal proposal, correct?
Right.
All right, so let me brush through this. This is stuff you guys all know, but I'm going to say it anyway. I am flattered that there are those out there who believe that as legislators we can convene, go inside a building, have a vote, and say, we just replaced your Constitution. Ta-da! We came out with a new Constitution. If we could do that, I mean, it's just ridiculous, but I understand their fears, because I held the same fears, remember, in 2013. I understand them. But I didn't understand that, no, we cannot walk into a building and whatever we vote on, when we finalize that vote, does it become law? Does whatever we decide in that Article 5 convention, when we finalize and we adjourn, sine die, is what we did inside there now law?
No.
No, it's not law. Give me a couple, just a couple. This is important.
It is.
So,
Yeah.
It's not law, right? It's a proposal. Whatever it was, if it's not on, let's say it did run away. Let's say, when you're arguing with somebody, go there. Okay, let's say the amendment is to repeal the Second Amendment. It wasn't on the agenda. Let's say they came out. It's not law. It has to get to Congress, and Congress has to look at that and go, yeah, it's not a legal amendment, but we're going to send it out for ratification anyway, right? So they send it out for ratification. What do? We sue them. It goes all the way to the Supreme Court. Right now, at least, it doesn't prevail. So even if it did prevail in the Supreme Court, yeah, it's a legal amendment. What happens then? Congress has to send it out for ratification. You need 30, how many? 38 states to ratify that. Do we have 38 blue states that will ratify to remove the Second Amendment? No. Do we have any red states that would do that? No. Nothing that comes out of that building is going to get ratified unless it has support from both blue and red states. Right? And that's unfortunate because there's a lot of stuff we need to get done that blue states won't support. But I'm feeling the hook here, so I think I got through my list. That's great. So I just want you guys to really make sure that when you argue with folks, there's one last thing, that they're going to change the rules. When they go in there, they can change the rules because they did it back in 1787, right? Well, the country, here's your answer. The country was 11 years old and still malleable at that time. We are 240-something, I don't know what it is right now, 240-something years old. There's no way legislators can go in there and come back out, or any delegate, and decide that now we have a new constitution. It's just not a viable argument. It's an argument of fear. Approach their fear with facts and understand where they're coming from. They're on our team, but they're wrong. And walk them through. The worst case scenario, it's not getting ratified, whatever even was that made it out. So thank you guys for your support. Thanks for having me here. I look forward to hearing from the rest of you guys. And thanks for the extra couple minutes. And I didn't get the hook.